Welcome to the Story World channel. Enjoy your viewing experience. Bernard, what on earth are you doing? Mrs. Hargreaves, the lamented neighbor, gazed at Bernard reproachfully. Bernard was like a son to her, and seeing him in such a distressed state troubled her deeply. "I'm in grief, don't you know, Mrs. Hargreaves?" Bernard whispered, tears streaming down his face as he swayed at the table, struggling to keep the drink in his unsteady hand. His red, swollen eyes appeared distracted and vacant, and his cheeks and chin were covered in unkempt stubble, adding to his miserable and untidy appearance. Mrs. Hargreaves wrinkled her nose, clearly concerned about Bernard's condition. "Yes, you are grieving, but she's grieving too." The woman pointed towards a little girl huddled in the corner of the sofa, looking frightenedly at her father. "She may be 100 times more hurt and scared than you are. She's only 6 years old and has not only lost her mother, but now her father has turned into a monster." Mrs. Hargreaves stood in the middle of the room, her eyes sparkling with anger. She turned to the little girl and spoke to her in a soft and gentle voice. "Come with me, Esther. Daddy will come and get you when he gets a little better." Esther immediately responded to her neighbor's affectionate appeal, running up to her and wrapping her little arms around her. Her eyes looked hopeful, finding solace in the presence of the kind elderly woman. Mrs. Hargreaves then turned her attention back to Bernard. "You, Bernard, need to get yourself cleaned up and stop drinking. Esther will stay with me for a while, and you need to remember that you are the most dear person in the world to her. You have to think about her first, not just about how you're hurt and miserable." Mrs. Hargreaves gently took the girl and left the room, leaving an oppressive silence in the house. Bernard's hand reached for his glass instinctively, but he managed to suppress the impulse. "Mrs. Hargreaves is right. It is necessary to live, at least for Esther," he acknowledged quietly to himself. Collapsing face down on the sofa, he tried to find solace in an anxious sleep, hoping to escape the weight of his troubled thoughts. As he closed his eyes, memories of his family life flashed before him like scenes in a movie. He could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, realizing that he needed to take better care of himself for the sake of his beloved daughter, Esther. In the warm glow of their wedding day, Helen, beautiful and radiant in her gown, gleefully whispered to her beloved, "You and I are going to live happily ever after." The promise of an idyllic future lay ahead. However, the narrative of their love story took an unexpected turn when a recent picture of Helen, pale and worn down by illness, surfaced in his mind. Her voice, once full of life, now sounded quiet and sorrowful. She uttered a heartfelt plea, "You should take care of our Esther. Don't leave her." These memories weighed heavily on his heart, and tears of shame filled his eyes for not being able to cope with the past challenges. Determined to change, he visited Mrs. Hargreaves, knowing that Esther needed him now more than ever. When he arrived, Mrs. Hargreaves greeted him with a stern look. "Oh, you have come to your senses," she remarked over her glasses. "Come in, but you'll have to wait. Esther is sleeping after lunch. Join me for tea while we reminisce." As they sat at the table, memories flowed freely, and Esther slept soundly on the old couch, mirroring her father's past slumber. Mrs. Hargreaves shared her own sorrowful tale, losing her son in a tragic work accident, leaving her feeling adrift in life until little Esther became her source of purpose. An hour later, Esther woke up and joyfully rushed into her father's arms, delighted to see him in a better state. "Daddy, my daddy is back," she exclaimed with a beaming smile. Yet life's journey wasn't without its challenges. Bernard faced periods of depression and relapses into drinking, during which Mrs. Hargreaves would offer solace and care for Esther. Time passed, and Esther grew up, excelling in school while Mrs. Hargreaves continued to be a rock of support during Bernard's difficult moments. One day, Bernard introduced a new woman into their lives, and the tale continues with newfound hope and the potential for redemption and a brighter future. The journey of love, growth, and resilience continues as they navigate life's unpredictable waters together. "Daughter, meet Scarlett. She's going to live with us, and I hope you'll be friends with her," said the beautiful and tall woman, looking at Esther with a slight squint in her eyes and a smile as bright as a candy wrapper. Esther smiled back, hopeful that her new stepmother would bring happiness to her father's life, ending his drinking and tearful nights. At first, everything seemed fine. In front of her father, Scarlett was warm and affectionate towards Esther. However, when he was away, Scarlett's behavior took a dark turn. Esther couldn't fathom why her stepmother harbored such animosity towards her. Every day brought scoldings and humiliations from Scarlett, leaving Esther confused and hurt. Despite the mistreatment, Esther kept quiet, fearing that her father's fragile happiness would shatter if he discovered Scarlett's true nature. This silence emboldened Scarlett, and her abuse escalated to physical violence, leaving Esther with painful bruises. One day, Bernard noticed a bruise on his daughter's arm and questioned her about it. Esther, struggling to hold back tears, lied and claimed she had fallen accidentally. Scarlett looked on triumphantly and haughtily from the window, confident that her secret would remain hidden. As the abuse continued, Esther's health deteriorated. She became thin, pale, and constantly in tears, yet she still shielded her father from the truth. Scarlett, aware of the scrutiny, learned to inflict harm without leaving visible marks. Bernard began to sense that something was amiss with Esther and decided to confront his wife about it. "Scarlett, there's something wrong with Esther. Maybe she's sick," he suggested, genuinely concerned for his daughter's well-being. Scarlett responded callously, "What's wrong with her? She should be punished. She's rude and lazy, doesn't even wash a cup after herself. She just mocks me. I treat her with all my heart, and she looks at me like a wolf." Unaware of the truth, Bernard tried to mediate, but Esther's pain continued in silence, as she endured the torment in the belief that protecting her father was paramount. The household became a battleground of emotions, with Esther yearning for the happiness she once hoped Scarlett would bring, and Scarlett harboring resentment and ill intentions. The tale unfolds with the haunting shadow of Scarlett's abuse, Esther's unwavering love for her father, and the pursuit of a better life free from fear and suffering. Throughout the ordeal, Esther's eyes goggled in disbelief as she witnessed the depth of her stepmother's deceit. She had never imagined that someone could lie so convincingly. "Father Stanley, what's going on? Why don't you listen to Scarlett? What do you want?" Esther tried to express her confusion but was left speechless and overwhelmed by the situation. Tears welled up in her eyes, and all she could manage to say was, "I want to go to my mummy." With a desperate shout, she ran to her room and stayed there until morning. The pain and confusion seemed unending, threatening to consume her fragile spirit. However, Mrs. Hargreaves, the caring neighbor, once again intervened, sensing the distress in both Esther and Bernard. As Bernard rushed to work, Mrs. Hargreaves approached him, expressing her concern and the yearning for their company. Bernard, troubled by the recent events, couldn't shake the uneasiness stirred by his neighbor's words. His mind was fixated on what might be happening at home while he was away. Back at home, Esther's fear and withdrawal persisted, reflecting in her demeanor both at school and within the household. Bernard couldn't fathom why his once obedient and praised daughter had turned into a frightened soul. As Esther returned from school one day, her stepmother met her at the door with a wet towel in her hand. "Well, come in, you poor thing," she hissed with a threatening tone. "So you want to go to your mother? I'll give you such an opportunity, you ungrateful little wretch." With a surge of anger and frustration, Scarlett slapped Esther on the back with the wet towel, causing the girl to cry out in pain. At that very moment, Bernard's voice resounded from the threshold, demanding, "Stop it at once." He had finally reached his breaking point and realized the truth about his wife's cruel treatment of Esther. With a mix of shock and anger, Bernard stepped forward to protect his daughter from further harm. He had seen enough, and he was determined to put an end to the torment Esther had endured in silence. The house trembled with the intensity of emotions as Bernard confronted Scarlett, demanding an explanation for her actions. The truth, which had remained concealed for too long, was now laid bare, and the moment of reckoning had arrived. The story unfolds with a battle of emotions, family ties tested, and the pursuit of justice and healing. With Mrs. Hargreaves as a guiding light, the journey to mend the broken pieces begins, as Esther finds the strength to share her pain and Bernard confronts the truth he had been blind to for far too long. It's a tale of resilience, redemption, and the power of standing up for what is right, even when it means facing the darkest corners of one's own home. Upon seeking counsel from his neighbor, Bernard found his hands trembling as he processed what he had witnessed. "Darling, I swear I didn't do it on purpose. She just drove me crazy," he explained anxiously. The neighbor suggested, "Let's consider giving her to your mother, or perhaps an orphanage." "It's not your fault, Bernard. I can't fathom why she makes you so angry," he empathized. Scarlett's response was a sharp and emotional outburst. "Are you crazy? An orphanage? I'll put you in jail. I never thought you were capable of such a thing." Concerned and worried, Bernard rushed to his daughter Esther, wrapping his arms around her gently. "Honey, tell me where it hurts. Forgive me, my little one," he pleaded. Esther, tightly hugging her father's neck, let out all the pent-up emotions she had held inside. Tears streamed down her cheeks in an unstoppable torrent. Mrs. Hargreaves entered the room, her face betraying her contempt and hatred for Scarlett, who was busy packing her suitcase. "People like you should be imprisoned or isolated from society for life," she expressed her disdain, addressing Esther's stepmother. Scarlett smirked in response and retorted, "It's not my duty to take care of other women's children." The elderly woman confronted Scarlett. "Then why did you marry him? You knew he had a daughter, didn't you?" she resented. Scarlett attempted to justify herself. "I just thought I'd eventually persuade Bernard to put the girl in a boarding school." Bernard's anger flared up, and he raised his voice. "Get out," he shouted, still holding Esther close. "Otherwise, I'm not responsible for myself." Scarlett, with her head held high, gathered her 2 suitcases and walked away. Bernard continued to hold Esther in his arms for a long time, offering comfort and solace. "Forgive me, my dear, that I didn't see or hear anything. You've been through so much. Remember, you must always tell me if something worries you. I'm your daddy, and I'll do anything to make you happy. You're my joy, my life, and I love you more than anything in the world. I love you very, very much, Daddy," he reassured her. Following the traumatic incident, Esther received support from a child psychologist, and over time, she managed to heal and recover. Bernard chose not to remarry after the incident, as his daughter held a special place in his heart. "She is dearer to me than anyone else in the world," he would say. As time passed, Mrs. Hargreaves continued to provide help and support to the family in the neighborhood.